Hi, Ivan. It's so nice to meet you and have you here. For those listening, this is Ivan Wilzig, the son of Siggi Wilzig. Ivan, you just, when did the book get published about your
4 years
father?
ago. 4 years ago.
4 years ago, the book Unstoppable Siggi was published. And
Unstoppable. It's,
what?
it's unstoppable. The subtitle is Siggi v. Wilzig's astonishing journey from Auschwitz survivor and penniless immigrant to Wall Street legend.
That's interesting because the title in my mind, I can't get the words out of my head. Unstoppable Siggi.
But I
Is
think I think we'll probably use that title if it ever gets turned into a major motion picture, a movie, or a television series.
I was just thinking that this would be an incredible series
Yeah,
because
I've gotten interest unsolicited just from people who have read the book, but the time wasn't right. And when the time is right, I'll get involved in it. And it is definitely going to be successful because it's the most unique story of all time.
the character, your father's character, the combination of the grit, the determination, not caring about anybody, like whatever anyone says, whatever limits people put on him, and then the humor, the humor combined, it's just the salesmanship, everything. It's when I think about it, it's like a mix of it's like a mix of Jackie Mason and I don't know who else with it, but like some kind of a Terminator. Like
Well, I tell people
hilarious.
my father was a fusion of Jackie Mason and Bernard Baruch, the business genius, because
Yeah.
he was funny like hell and brilliant like hell.
So I mean the first part of the book that caught my attention where I was like this is not a normal individual was when the family had to move to Berlin because of the persecution. And he just started snooping around and finding stealing stuff from government offices so he could forge visas. And I'm like, who does that? What, like 16 years old he was at the time? 15?
Younger, even younger. I think somewhere it's not clear from the records, but it was probably more. If I had to guess, 12 to 14 years old. Could possibly have been even younger, 11 to 13, 12 to 14. But yes, very precocious, very brave. Um, Obviously, not afraid to take risks, and up to any challenge. That's for sure, because he was successful in stealing whatever documents and devices were necessary to forge documents to get some of our relatives out of Germany before they could be exterminated.
Yeah, I mean it was I mean I didn't even recognize or comprehend the age, but that just makes it all the more outstanding. Like it just I mean you clearly see he was running on a very different software than the rest of us.
Yeah, no question, he was very bright for his age, and he credited to listening and learning from what adults, people older than him, were saying, and he would absorb the knowledge and expertise from that rather than listening to what other kids had to say about things.
Yeah, but even the thought to do that, and that's only knowledge, but the guts, the guts, you don't get that from listening to older people.
Yeah, no, no, his entire life from the time he was sneaking into embassy to do that uh, to fights he had with anti-Semitic kids growing up, to dealing with anti-Semitism in America, to confronting any challenge, anytime, and never backing down. Uh, he really had balls of steel.
Yeah, yeah. And for some people that comes out more because they're under like life-threatening situations. Sometimes people just see the moment requires it. But when he is like a multi-millionaire and he just wants to run the company the way he wants to run it, he'll just stand up to the Fed and he does not care.
Yeah, he made money for all his companies, and then worried later whether he was violating a particular uh, uh, law or legislation or a recommendation or advice from the government. He didn't have the highest regard for government officials. He considered them schmucks, like many other people who challenged him.
I can just imagine when it becomes a movie or a TV series, the schmucks is just gonna be over and over.
Yes, yes. If I had a nickel for every time he called someone a schmuck, I'd be wealthy in my own right.
Um, one of the things that about the book that was just somewhat perplexing to me in terms of how he pulled it off, and maybe you can expand on this. How in the world did he convince Saul Diamond that from being like a furniture salesman and running a funeral home, he was then ready to run a public oil company? I mean, for those listening who haven't read the book, Siggy went from just working a mom and pop, furniture business and then working, in a funeral home to convincing a
It was
very,
a
very
cemetery business,
wealthy,
never a funeral home. It was a cemetery
oh, cemeteries, yeah, to
business.
convincing an incredibly savvy investor who was 80 years old that at the age of 30 something, at the age of 39, 36, he was around the time.
Yes, we have to understand Saul Diamond. If you're a successful business person in your own right, which Saul Diamond was, he was a member of the New York Stock Exchange. He uh, uh, he had many companies of his own, businesses that he had bought and sold. Was an expert in the stock market, and he, like other people, if it wasn't Saul Diamond, it would have been another smart, wealthy individual that would have wanted to back this horse, meaning my father, because you met my father, and in 5 minutes, you can tell that this man is special, that this man is unique, that this man is one of a kind. This man is ambitious and aggressive and intelligent and funny and handsome, and he can probably do anything put before him, which was the case. He had a dozen different salesman jobs before and saved whatever commissions he could make from those small jobs, and then started investing in the stock market. So the fact that he was smart enough to do that, even to take his sales commissions and invest in Wilshire Oil Company of Texas, which coincidentally was the same company that Saul Diamond had invested in, that similarity that they both had the same stock. This poor concentration camp survivors, traveling salesman, and this mega millionaire American Jew who had a lot of great success in business, saw in my father, probably in 5 minutes, that this man was capable of running a company or being the front man for his to take over the company. If you met anyone that met my father, forget about Saul Diamond, anyone that met my father for 5 minutes said they would never forget him as long as they live. He made that much of an impact when he came into a room or looked you in the eye or had a conversation with you. So that's kind of a special trait to have.
Wow. When did you, were there any memories, maybe things not in the book that you had from him where you looked at him and you're like, wow, my dad is something special. Like this is really like what was that like to see him do that?
Well, what was amazing, even at a young age, I mean, I didn't know anything about business, but I knew enough to know that he was like the original one-man show. He was running, at one point, he was running a bank, a commercial bank, an oil and gas drilling company, and an electronics distribution company. Three companies that each, obviously, they each had many employees, but he really was running them all himself, uh, down to the nitty gritty, from from buying the pencils at the bank to the computers to hiring to firing. He was involved with in every little aspect of those three businesses. So any one of those businesses would have been more than enough for any clever, smart, entrepreneurial man to run and be content with. But the fact that he was running all three at the same time was just extraordinary, just incredible, just hard to believe. And let alone the fact that he ran them all well, extremely well.
What do you think was I guess in the maybe just in the business world today, is there something that he had that you think he did everything so different, but it was so successful? I mean, there was something so personal about how he did everything. Every decision, every calculation, it went beyond the surface. It, do you see like I see that becoming even more and more rare today in some ways. People operating at that
what
level.
was rare, what was rare about it then is that all the calculations that it takes to figure out whether something is going to be profitable or not profitable, whether it's going to be something to invest in or not invest in, something to buy or something to sell. He was doing all these things in his head. It was before the invention of the computer and the internet. So, and he only graduated grammar school. That was the end of his formal education, that and 2 years of trade school. And he didn't finish trade school, he just finished grammar school. But the fact that he could, in his mind, was so good at the simple basics of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And even in his head, sometimes he didn't even need a pencil and paper to jot it down. That he was able to figure these things out and calculate them was just a rare trait to have. Not everybody's good at math. Not everybody's good at figures. And if they are, sometimes they have to utilize devices to get their answers and make their decisions. He did it all in his head and by gut instinct. He would look you in the eye, and in 5 minutes, if you told him what you wanted to borrow money for your business, he would tell you in 5 minutes before even looking at the financial statements whether this was going to be a good loan or a bad loan, whether he could trust this person and not trust this person to pay the money back, which made for a very successful bank because we had very few foreclosures and very few bad loans because he got involved in almost every loan in the bank, which the examiners didn't like. Didn't like the president, chairman, and CEO of a significantly large bank to get involved with the hiring of tellers and branch managers and lower officers. They felt he should have been delegating those to people he trusted. But unfortunately, the only person he trusted was himself when push came to shove.
I mean, the intuitive. I mean, and then just going even back to when he was in Auschwitz, the amount of times, and he credits that, like he credits that many times that God just put the right word in his mouth at the right time. But there were so many quick decisions, whether to hide or go on the death march, whether to go in a car that or a van that had prisoners in it, or to go in a van that had dead bodies. Like there was all these split-second decisions, like what to say when there's like the two lines, what do you tell? And like the these uncannily accurate decision making that was just unreal.
Well, he definitely doesn't take credit for having survived the Holocaust himself on his wits and his own brains. He attributes it to the Almighty. He felt like somebody was watching over him and putting these ideas in his head. and he gave credit and kept his faith throughout, and was a practicing Jew after the Holocaust. After he married my mother, there was a couple years in between when he wasn't so religious when he first came to America. But after he married my mother, who came from an Orthodox family, he became traditional again, and a kosher observer and a Shabbat observer, and took off every single Jewish holiday from the holy ones, from Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur to every single Jewish holiday you can think of. So it was rare. It was rare. But he didn't go to shul every Shabbos. He had reasons for not doing that. The one was the difficulty he found in being that observant, basically because he couldn't justify or deal with the 1.5 million Jewish children under the age of 15 or under the age of 12, depending on how you're counting it. And he lost small children, niece and nephew in his own family. So that's when asked why you don't go to shul every Saturday, he would say, because I fight with the Almighty over the murder of so many children, innocent children. And he also said, since he always had a joke to go along with every serious comment, he said, I take the day of rest literally. and I just stay in bed and I rest. So he felt like he was observing that commandment by being a literalist. I take the day of rest literally. I don't go to shul. I stay home and rest. And that would recharge his battery. He said, I work so hard during the week that just resting recharges my battery to do whatever I have to do to get through all the grueling hours that I put in day and night during the week. And that's what he did.
How many hours was he putting in on average? Like, how much did he sleep?
He slept very little. I didn't see him very much growing up. He would just come in to give me a kiss goodnight. Actually, it was 3 kisses goodnight. He explained how he kissed me, my sister, and my brother 3 times always. Once because he loved us, and 2 because I think it was special, and 3 for all the children that didn't get to be kissed goodnight that got murdered during the Holocaust. So he literally kissed us 3 times goodnight, all of us, me, my brother, and sister, for those reasons, for the murdered children. And what was the question again?
I don't remember.
Okay, but
how much did he sleep? Like, how much?
oh yeah, he didn't sleep very much. He said that I don't sleep very much because when he would sleep, he would have nightmares. So the less he slept, the less nightmares and flashbacks he would have. So he was a true workaholic. And that actually explains some of his success, because he was working day and night, sleeping very little, and was able to have that much energy. He had more energy than any 5 men put together. He would walk so fast because he was only 5'5.5". He was short, and he'd deal with 6'2", 6'3" Gentile bankers, Wall Street bankers, and they would literally be running after him to keep up with him because he was that fast. So you see these tall, lanky Gentiles running after my father to keep up with him, or bank officers or whatever they were, and no one could keep up with him. That's how fast he walked. You would literally have to run to keep up with his walking. He walked faster, talked faster, and thought faster than your average human being.
Yeah, I would love to have seen that.
Yeah, it's comical.
The more we talk about it, the more amazing I think a film would be. When he told you that, the thing about the 3 kisses, what was it like hearing that?
Well, it was sad, of course,
Yeah.
because I knew it was a horror that he never got over. which, and I mean, obviously he spared us the gory and the sordid details of the tortures and the medical experiments and the things that he witnessed every day, having spent 23 months in Auschwitz, almost 2 years, when your average lifespan of someone coming into Auschwitz was, I think, 30 days, 30 or 40 days. He spent almost 2 years there. Then 2 death marches, once to Mauthausen, and then back to Mauthausen from a factory that they had him working at. 2 death marches, and then Mauthausen, where he was liberated by the American army. And he said that Mauthausen was so bad, it was almost as bad or as bad as Auschwitz. That's how bad it was. It was also an extermination camp, not just a concentration camp, with mass killings every day.
What, and you mentioned this, and it's also in the book, but it really stayed with him every single day.
Yes,
The
he
days
would.
he was there.
There would be a very rare day that would go by that he wouldn't find an excuse in a conversation or a meeting with anyone at any time, business or social, that wouldn't segue into an Auschwitz story or an anti-Semitic story or a problem in Israel or a problem with terrorism or a problem. He was, like I said, not super religious, but a super devoted and fighter for the Jewish people and for Jewish causes and for the religion and the morality, and was quite proud of all the Nobel Prize winners and the way of life and Jewish family life that he was a big proponent of.
So of all the causes that he supported, what was most dear to him?
Well, he was Elie Wiesel's right-hand man on establishing and launching the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. So that was probably first and foremost his number one devotion both to Elie Wiesel, his best friend, and to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., appointed by President Carter, and then reappointed by Reagan, and then I think the next president after that too. He was on for 3 presidents or 3 terms, and Elie used him because the bank specialized in real estate finance and development. Elie sent them on a mission to besides to restructure the bad shape that the Holocaust Museum was in when Elie brought him on board. Besides him having turned it all around in the nick of time, Elie sent him also to all the big machers, all the big Jewish real estate developers in Manhattan, because he knew he spoke their language and had that in common with them, the real estate finance and development. And he went to the big Jewish developers in Manhattan to get donations.
There was a lot of conflict and complication around making that museum, and it talks a lot about that in the book and the different opinions of how to do things, and even the controversy that led to just it starting. Was he, in the end, was he happy with the project? Was he happy with how it came out?
Yes, at the time it was launched, I believe it accomplished everything that the founders, that the original trustees, the original boards had in mind. It was primarily a Jewish Holocaust museum, and maybe while it covered a few other ethnic groups or touched upon a couple other genocides that had taken place in history, it stuck true to its goal and main aim. I think, unfortunately, though, over the years, without him and Elie Wiesel and people like that on the board, I suspect it became much more egalitarian, and that it became more too much of a, I haven't been there back, but too much of a universal genocide thing in dealing with Rwanda and Darfur and Armenia and Turkey with the Turks and other genocides. And I suspect that it became a little woke.
Yeah.
Because I remember calling them up and saying, my father was one of the founders. I don't know if I call her the woman who was doing my Jewish networking to try and get talking talking engagements for me and the author, and to make sure that Holocaust bookstores and synagogues were carrying the book. I think when she sent him a letter and said, "Can we do a program together?" I think the response was, we're dealing with some right now. The issue is some third world the dilemma, as if the Holocaust was a thing. It sounded like it was wasn't worthy of having a Holocaust book and lecturer on at the Washington
About
Holocaust.
the same person who was instrumental in making the museum.
Yeah, and they don't want me to come, and they don't want me to talk about him. So to me, that was an indication that things had gotten far worse than when my father was there, and when Ellie was there, and the other believers on the initial board that felt that the Holocaust was a uniquely Jewish aimed project. Mein Kampf was all about murdering the Jews and only the Jews, pretty much. And the plan and the extermination and the many millions obviously affected us worse than any other people. So, but who knows what's going to happen with that museum now? Because as you may or may not be aware, I think Trump fired the entire staff or everybody that was on the Washington Holocaust Museum. I don't know for what reasons, and is appointing all his own board members. So some
Oh, wow.
natural in politics when a new party's taken over, but it also may have been to wipe out a certain mentality or the direction it was going in, like our own best schools in America had became anti-Semitic and bastions of hate and anti-Semitism. So maybe even Holocaust museums were going in that horrible direction. Who knows?
Yeah, it's really one of the most painful parts of the book was seeing how incredibly successful he was at an individual, but he had the weight of the whole Jewish world on his shoulders. And when things happen, when Reagan visited the cemetery with the SS buried there, and
In Bitburg, yeah.
these kinds of things, they were just the setbacks were incredible to read about. How it impacted him was so heartbreaking.
Yeah, he and every other Holocaust survivor was sickened by the fact that Reagan was going to visit a cemetery full of SS soldiers, and then he made it even worse by equivalating them with the Jewish victims that were killed in the camps. So yeah, that was a very painful event that took place and upset many Holocaust survivors.
And for those who haven't read the book, I mean, he even fought the president live on radio. You know,
Yeah, she used to go on the Barry Farber show, which was the most syndicated, successful radio program, talk show in the history of radio, at least up until that time. And he was on the show many times talking about the energy crisis or a banking crisis and then the Holocaust, of course. And yeah, it was funny. He became very close with Barry Farber, who was a Southern Jew. I wasn't used to hearing anyone Jewish say "Shalom, y'all." Y'all, it sounded like a cowboy. Didn't sound like a Jew.
I'm assuming your father didn't think he was a schmuck.
No, he loved Barry Farber. Barry Farber was very articulate and very knowledgeable about many things.
Um, the book mentions that your father had a rabbi that he was very close with. It doesn't go into so much detail about what that relationship was like, but I'm curious, you know, it didn't seem like he had that many people he confided in about what he was really going through personally. How much do you know about that relationship with the rabbi and that influence that it had on his life?
Well, it had a great influence on his life because he wasn't a believer in psychiatrists. He thought they were all nuts or phonies, uh, and didn't take them very seriously. But Rabbi Dr. Leon Katz from Adas, Israel, in Passaic, was his spiritual mentor and confidant and friend and an advisor, and they shared many views of the world and shared some similar tragedy within their own families. Um, and he had a great deal of respect for him, and I'm sure it was therapeutic every time they got together to talk about anything.
Yeah. He what I'm trying to figure out. Oh, about what the thing with Jackie Mason has a bit on psychiatrists.
Yeah,
It's we're gonna go find myself that one. It was just
yeah,
that I love that bit. I love that bit so
yeah.
much.
No, the best thing I ever did for my father, well, one of them was on his 70th birthday, arranging for him uh, to see Jackie Mason's show on Broadway in the front row, to go backstage, to go to the producers' party. And then after he had the greatest birthday of his life, the next day said, "Don't make any other plans." And we had a kosher steakhouse dinner, and Jackie Mason came in and joined the family for dinner. And the two of them sat across from each other, throwing one-liners back and forth to see who was the funniest Jew at the table. Because, like I said, there wasn't a day that my father didn't segue into Holocaust stories, even if we started off talking about business. And there was rarely a day where he didn't also break into some Jackie Mason routine. And if you closed the door and just heard the voice, you would swear Jackie Mason was in the other room. That's how similar their their sense of humors were.
I mean, I hear it like even through the pages of the book, I can hear how well they mesh together, and the fact that he could go toe to toe and be almost as funny, like or as funny as him back and forth.
Yeah. I tell you a funny story that's not in the book. After we have this birthday dinner and my father made some, Jackie Mason starts calling my father like daily, like relentlessly, because he couldn't figure out how a Jew could survive Auschwitz and become the president and chairman of a multi-billion-dollar bank. So he figured, this guy's a genius. I asked to be my banker. I want him to be my banker. And he's calling him, I want you to be my banker. I want you to do this. I want you to do that. And my father turned to me in the bank one day and said, he's driving me with sugar. He calls me every day. He wants me to be his banker. I have no time for that. Tell him to go away. So Jackie Mason started driving my father in Meshuggah. And my father just sort of blew him off.
Oh my goodness, that's too funny.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've learned, the way in which I learn or the way in which I read things, whatever about people or books or anything is, how does this become like something that I can take for how to live my life? And the thing that I found that I was very impressed with the book was that it really felt to me that it was genuinely giving a very honest portrayal of who your father was, you know, the talents that he had, the successes that he had, but also the pain he went through and the darker side and the more, difficult side. And when I read the book, it gives me like a very having just a very honest depiction of, the the good parts to who he was, the incredible parts to who he was, and also the things that he wrestled with was really, really, it's not really a question, but it's more a reflection of the book, was very, very it really touched me. I mean, the book, it wasn't just entertaining. It was because I found it and I felt it to be so honest, it was very touching throughout the whole thing.
But many other, everyone got that same sense that you got, that we didn't sugarcoat who Siggy was. We told it as it was, as it is, the real Siggy. In fact, the author from the very start, Joshua M. Green, said, "I'm not going to do just another Holocaust memoir where family members get together and just write, oh, daddy or grandpa or something was such a good man and such a charitable man and such a this and such a that, and not discuss his flaws or his fears or mistakes that he made and things like that." And I told the author, I said, no, we'll warts and all, you're free to write the story as it is, as it truly is. Uh, he had nothing to hide. We have nothing to hide. Tell it like it is, and he told it like it is. And thanks to a great deal, also to the people. And he interviewed over 100 people, so it wasn't just my view, and my sister's view, and my brother's view, and my late mother's view. Almost 100 people, businessmen, shareholders, officers, stockholders, lawyers he dealt with, customers he dealt with. They all weighed in. They all weighed in. So that's why you got like a beautiful picture and a very full picture and a well-rounded picture of the man, his life, his beliefs, and what inspired him to keep going and get up every day.
Yeah, and because of that, like it really lives inside of me. I mean, I personally, like, I read the book because I saw you, I saw the book, I wanted to talk to you about it. But as I was reading it, I found it was so inspiring for me and what I've been going through right now in my own life. The drive and the resourcefulness that he had was just and the trust in his intuition was so incredibly good, and almost him having still the things that he was suffering from while he was being so successful in other areas. In a way, it's like even more inspiring because he was still couldn't sleep because he had nightmares about what he was going through. He was still, you know, dealing with stuff, but he was so full of light and full of life to people. It was just, I was,
Oh yeah, it was the life of the party, literally. He would dance with everyone, shake hands with everyone, kiss all the women hello. He made everyone feel welcome. He made everyone feel like family. He made everyone feel important. He made everyone feel special. And that was the key. It was his charm and his charisma that made you want to do anything with him. Go to a party, do business with, go on vacation with, go out to dinner with. Anything was a pleasure when you're in the company of somebody who's that entertaining.
what, what was your mother? I don't think the book so much discusses this. So when your mother first met him, what was her impression of him?
Handsome, Jewish, intelligent, uh, maybe more mature than the other boys her age. Uh, and so she was impressed. They fell in love quickly, quickly.
She wasn't at all bothered by his height or that he was from overseas when her family was established and wealthy in America for years. It didn't
No,
bother
no.
her.
That's one of the things he loved about her is that she didn't judge him for anything having to do with his past, unlike her parents, who were very orthodox and very judgmental as to who she had fallen in love with and, and her plans to marry him. So that was a difficult hurdle for him to overcome. And like all hurdles that he overcame in his life, he went from being the feared, hated, despised uh, son-in-law to my grandfather's favorite son-in-law, and the one who my grandfather would go to for stock tips, advice is what stock to buy and what buildings to buy, and this and that. He even became the advisor to my mother's father, who was a successful businessman in his own right. So he went from being unacceptable to being the only son-in-law he would talk to.
Did your grandmother also come around? Because it seemed like it took her a little bit longer. She
Well, my grandmother suffered from melancholy, which which was depression. So she was
uh-huh.
never all there all the time. So she was just in the kitchen cooking Luxemkugel or something. She didn't play a very prominent role in anything in those days.
Got it.
She was just
Got
a
it.
good, nice Jewish grandmother. But yeah, but no, she didn't take kindly to him either at the beginning. And there's some funny scenes how she reacted to him coming there. But like they said, first they got married in front of a judge, and then they got a Jewish wedding under a chuppah, and and like I said, he came very far. Because at the wedding, you had all my mother's American Jewish family on one side, and my father's refugee survivor relatives and friends on the other side, and they weren't really talking to each other on the wedding, if you know what I mean. But like I said, he overcame that hurdle and became like the only son-in-law that was self-made, and impressed my grandfather.
Yeah, it's I mean your mother it was very important for her to go to school, but she quit for the because he wanted to be self-sufficient.
Yeah, she wouldn't take any money from when he married her. He made her promise that he would not ever take a dime from her father, his father-in-law. That he would do it on they would do it on their own. He would do it on his own, and he did.
The earlier days as a traveling salesman were not so bright.
Well, it depends on which travel sales job you're talking about. But he kept plugging at it. He just went from one to another. You know.
What was it like as a kid seeing his ascension? Because like it seems that in the first few years when he was still working the local being a salesman, working at, for the cemetery, it was more of like a normal, more of like just like a normal father with a normal job. Or was he like, what was he like during those years before Wilshire Oil?
Um. Well, he became president of Wilshire when I was 13. So anything under the age of 13, you're talking when I was a kid. I don't have.
Right.
I don't remember that many stories about what he was doing work wise when I was a kid.
I mean, at some point you noticed the ascension where like work just became enormously like, bigger? Like what?
Well, the whole world changed when he became president of Wilshire. We moved from a middle class neighborhood in Clifton, New Jersey, to an upper middle class neighborhood in Clifton, New Jersey. Um, Friends were different, sports were different, um, cars we drove were different, house was different, and that's when I noticed that something was going on business wise that elevated us financially into this new world.
What was that like?
Well, it was a learning experience. I mean, because from the one part of Clifton I grew up in that was middle class, it was like football, baseball, and basketball. And then I moved to the upper middle class section of Clifton, and the kids I went to school was friends with and went to school with all belonged to country clubs, played golf, tennis, and went skiing. all rich man sports, or at least they were then. So, so it was a radical difference. From the middle class neighborhood, I didn't see kids wearing sport shirts with Lacoste alligators, preppy alligators on their shirts. When I moved to the upper middle class section of Clifton, everybody wore the little alligator tennis shirts and things like that. So that's why I said everything was a different world. The way they dressed, the sports, um, the homes they lived in, the country clubs. It was a different a learning experience.
Did he change? Did you notice a change with him?
No, he wanted to drive the same car that he'd always been driving. My brother and I had to convince him to buy a nicer car. He wore a very simple watch on his wrist, and my brother and I would have to tell him you should have a more powerful watch, a more prestigious watch, a nicer watch. He was so down to earth that basically we had to talk. He used to he couldn't even relax. He didn't know how to wear a pair of tennis shorts and a t-shirt and a t-shirt. He was always wearing a suit and tie, even to go fishing. He would wear a suit and tie to go fishing. He would have to say, "Dad, relax. Take off your jacket. Take off your tie. Roll up your sleeves. You're fishing." And he looked like he was going to a business meeting. So we almost like got to teach him certain things.
Was he receptive to learning?
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
He felt much more comfortable when he put on a pair of white tennis shorts and a white t-shirt instead of always wearing a suit and tie. And he enjoyed, I'm sure, driving a nicer car. And he was impressed by the nicer watch. It's not that he didn't like nice things. It's just that he didn't really have a need for them.
What what did drive?
To my mother. My mother was like the most down to earth woman you can imagine. You've never had a or the wife of a bank president be more down to earth, or more famous, or more sweet, or wonderful, or giving person with a heart of gold. Not into any designer clothes. When every other woman in the neighborhood probably was into Gucci, Fiorucci, and or whatever, and she didn't care about or wear designer clothes. She didn't care about diamonds and jewelry, which my father could have afforded to buy her at that time if she wanted them. She didn't care about fur coats and fancy vacations, and neither of them ever took a vacation anywhere without taking the kids. Unlike all the other parents in that neighborhood that sent their kids away to sleepaway camp in the summer, the thought of sending his children to sleepaway camp horrified my father. Maybe the word camp being attached to it or whatever. He wasn't sending his kids to a camp, whether it was a summer camp for rich kids or not. None of us went to sleepaway camp, and they never went on vacation. They could have gone to San Tropez, they could have gone to Mykonos, they could have gone anywhere they wanted in the world. Father wasn't a gambler, didn't go to Vegas. And they didn't go to San Tropez. They didn't have to go to whatever trending hot spot there was in the world for the rich and famous. Didn't care about it. Didn't give a damn about it. Ever.
What? Wow. What did your mother care about? What was she interested in?
Helping the elderly, helping the sick, helping the poor. Like my sister does now, who is also extremely important in how good that book is today, because she, more than anyone, more than the author and more than myself, who put 8 years in of our lives of writing and rewriting, didn't catch the detail, the better stories, the excitement, the true Siggi, the essence of his soul better than the passages that my sister found or the stories that she told. So she deserves a great deal of credit for having turned an amazing book into a masterpiece.
She, for many years, was in a very interesting position when the Fed forced her father to step down from Wilshire, and she took over, but essentially was acting on his behalf in many ways. Um, I mean, in the book, you can tell that that was, at many times it seemed like it was not a comfortable position for her to be in, and it was, um, she would, but she seemed to be very much up to the task. Um, what was that like for her?
Frustrating at times, like it was for me, like it was for my brother. It was like all three of us. It was frustrating to work with a father that was so dominant, so powerful, so sure of himself, being right all the time. Um, a man who only who looked at the world in black and white and really wasn't a shades of gray type of man. He was there's right and there's wrong and nothing in between. So it was frustrating and to have a father like that who was strict and sure of himself and expected uh, loyalty and obedience in that old form European Prussian Prussian way of being.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. It seems how all of you have, you, your brother, and your sister have found a way to kind of flow with really both sides of him. Like you all seem to be so enamored and so um, deeply loyal, respectful, and committed, while also dealing with all these other things. It's really incredible.
Yeah, it was definitely a balancing act emotionally and in every which way. To have a father that we couldn't help but love and respect, who did everything, even if it was painful to us, we knew he was doing it because he loved us. And we knew he was doing it because of his past experiences having affected the way he felt about family and children and survival and the carrying on the Jewish tradition and Jewish people. So it was very frustrating for each to have our own beliefs and our own way of thinking and doing things and becoming our own person, and having a father who was uh, scarred, damaged by the Holocaust, by his experiences, by the loss of loved ones, by the murder of children, by having witnessed horrible medical experiments, by having so many so many sickening, horrible things, beatings, starvation, sickness, that it made sense that he was so overprotective of us. We tell a story in the book, and it was a day that was slightly chilly, and he had me. My mother put gloves and a sweater on me, and a jacket, light jacket, and a sweatshirt, and thermal underwear and boots. And it was just a little chilly out, but he was afraid I was going to catch pneumonia. Because if you caught pneumonia in the camps, 2 minutes later you were dead. So he was afraid that I'm going to catch pneumonia on a chilly day that wasn't even that cold. So, so yeah, having an overprotective father was sometimes very annoying and a little embarrassing. But we knew it. He's doing it because he loved us, not to belittle us or make fools of us.
Now, looking back now, having really lived through that, what do you feel like is the right thing to do for a child who's struggling with respecting a parent, but also wanting to live true to who they are?
Well, it's it's a tough place to be. It's because you just have to find a comfort level and a way for uh, uh, to justify how you're treating your parents and how you expect to be treated by them. Um, in old-fashioned traditional Jewish families, it's sort of like it's all like respect your parents, obey your parents, do what your parents say, follow in their footsteps. End the story. Me and my brother and sister did not do that. We each marched to a different drummer. We each had our own interests. We each wound up dating who we wanted to date and did what we wanted to do. And we dealt with the repercussions of angering him. At the same time, we walked on eggshells to not give him a heart attack because anything that we did that he didn't deem proper or following his instructions, he would say, "Hey, I'm going to have a heart attack. I have pains in my chest." So he didn't know. How are we supposed to know if he's really, is he faking that? He is having a heart attack and pains in his chest? Or because we've driven him crazy and have caused him so much pain and aggravation that he's really could drop dead at any moment. You don't want to be, if you're a child, you don't want to be in that position to have to be thinking about that. But we did, and we more than once.
You guys are unstoppable too.
Yeah, you might say that.
You all seem to
Each of us
kind
could write our own book of what it's being like the child of an unstoppable Holocaust survivor for sure.
of zooming back to the beginning when it's about Auschwitz. There's a part in the Death March where your father's dear friend, his name is not coming to me now.
Larry Nartell.
Yeah, he collapses, and people who Larry had saved were just kind of walking by, and your father lifted him on his shoulders. I mean, like carried him on his back, and the screen's frozen. Are you still there?
Yes, yes, I am. You're frozen. I'm
Okay.
not.
Okay. So it's carrying him on his back, and your father had enough energy to do that, but the only thing he was worried about were his shoes breaking. Because
Yeah,
getting
that was an amazing story. One of them actually did break, and then he got this crazy idea. He saw a sapling, a small tree, and he decided to strip the bark off the tree, twisted it around, dried it out, and somehow made shoelaces out of it. And that saved him. And because of that, he could keep walking, and it saved his life. But having saved Larry Nartell's life, I don't know how he got the strength to carry someone on his back marching along, because I'm sure he had next to no strength himself. But I'm sure what inspired him was that Larry Nartell had saved his life in Auschwitz. So, in effect, he was returning the favor because Larry had got him a job inside what they called Canada, the warehouses, which was an indoor job, less backbreaking work, and your job was to go through the seized belongings of the transports that came in, and they took the luggage, and they had to take out this, and this went to Berlin, this and this went in the garbage, this and this we kept for to make something out of, and it was their job. So there was a chance when you were in there. I mean, the penalty was a beating or death, but if you could smuggle something in your pocket or wherever people smuggle things in prison-like conditions and take it out of there, you might be able to barter with it later with another inmate for half a piece of bread or something like that and stay alive. So Larry had gotten him a job because he was working inside the warehouse before my father. And then somebody died in the warehouse. Larry changed the numbers, the registration numbers, and put my father's number and the dead man's number. And he took his place, and my father credits that for saving his life. So when my father later saved his life on the death march, they were even. They had each saved each other's life. My father's life was saved in Auschwitz by Larry, and my father saved Larry's life on the death march when he couldn't walk any longer.
Nice.
So that made a friendship that lasted forever, having saved each other's lives and been each other's confidants and one person they could trust in the camps.
Yeah, I mean that's just I mean they were 90 pounds at the time, right? I mean just to think
Yeah,
that
I don't know how he could have carried another person other than himself. I don't even know how he carried himself when so many people died on those death marches.
there's one thing in the book. I mean everything in the book I can imagine I somehow can imagine myself in. The jokes, the takeovers, even just the nerve and but there's one thing he did in the book, when I read that, I was like, I don't know. I can't even see myself doing that. Where it was after the liberation, one of the Nazi guards who had, I think, very beaten him, they caught and they gave him the opportunity to take revenge and kill the guard.
Yes.
He didn't do it. He didn't
No,
want
he didn't want to do it. Kind of like peer pressure amongst his fellow uh, victims to participate. He hit the guard one time and walked away, but he didn't want to be responsible for the man's death and didn't want to murder anyone and become a murderer himself, uh, like the Nazis and the guards and the capos. He didn't want to be like them.
I mean that hit me quite hard when because like just imagine going through that, the desire for revenge for everything didn't, he wasn't consumed by it. He wasn't interested in it.
No, no.
It was just had a very different, just such a different natural instinct about how he did things. What what do you feel really drove him to be financially as successful as he was? What was the purpose in it for him? He obviously didn't need or care about the lavish lifestyle. What did it mean to him?
Well, it meant security because in his mind and in his reality, the Jews that got out of Europe, whether it was Germany where he was from, born, or any other European country, it's the wealthy that got out. They're the ones that had relatives all over the world. They're the ones that had connections all over the world. They're the ones that had the money for legal documents and lawyers to get them out all over the world before it was too late. So basically, he was thinking of it as security for his family should anything catastrophic happen to the Jews again or to his family. That it would provide some sort of protection for them. Although, if you asked him whether the Holocaust could ever take place in America, his answer was unequivocally no. And if you asked him why, he would say it's because there's too much of a melting pot of ethnicities in America, uh, unlike Nazi Germany, which either was just white Christian Nazis or Jews and a few other people. So he just felt that the structure of the country, people-wise and government-wise, constitution-wise, and things like that, that it couldn't happen and wouldn't happen again in America. And but in spite of that, I still think in the back of his mind, he was thinking, money means survival of my family, or the chance to get away in the worst case scenario. And as I said before, by becoming a workaholic, the more he worked, the less he had time to dwell upon gruesome murder scenes he had witnessed or nightmarish experiences that he had gone through. That was another reason to keep working and making money. And then I guess it was a sense of accomplishment. I mean, everything had been taken away from his family and the Jewish people. So the more things he could earn or claw back or get back gave him a sense of, a real sense of respect, admiration, self-worth, invited to lecture all over the country, invited to speak on the Holocaust during Yom HaShoah by the governor or whatever, invited to be honored for every Jewish charity, anything having to do with Israel. He was just a unique and powerful individual, and I'm sure meeting 4 presidents of having been gone from Auschwitz to meeting 4 different presidents of the United States had to be very satisfying for him that the Jewish people had made a comeback. And with that money, he could do good. He could help other people, whether it was lending them money or giving them money. He could help other people. He was very into that. More than you can imagine, how he found the time to help, to be involved in so many other charities and help so many people individually was remarkable. If anything, that may have put some strain on his marriage with my mother, that he was so devoted to other people's families that he had little time to devote on his own family. That was really an amazing thing that he was able to do. To run these 3 companies that I mentioned before, the oil company, the bank, the electronics distribution company, and still have time for all the charitable work, the Holocaust Museum, and in Jewish events of importance. It's remarkable that he's able to help so many families and so many Jews and so many causes.
Yeah, I mean the one thing that struck me was the people at the bank. I mean, even the lower level people. I mean, it seemed like he was involved with hiring everybody. He knew them. He took care of them in
Yeah,
ways that were.
yeah, he was. I think having lost his own father, beaten to death in Auschwitz, and his mother sent straight to the gas chamber, and having lost 3 brothers and a sister were murdered, and he and 2 other brothers and a sister survived. It was a big family. This question again?
Um, I forgot.
You and I both.
The way he knew how much he knew everybody in the bank, but even though like he was
Oh yeah,
so.
yeah. I started to say. I'm glad you're able to come back to it, because right away I came back to it. He was, for a Jewish father, he was like the world's Jewish mother. He wanted to take care of everybody. He wanted to feed everybody. The way he would run around was more like a Jewish mother than a Jewish father. That's how giving he was, and how loving he was, and concerned he was with other people's happiness.
There's a saying that I read, it's like a little pearl of wisdom, but that, when a person has good for themselves, they can sometimes doubt, should I not? Am I worthy of it now? Should I be doing something better? But when you do it for someone else, for another person, you can't make that judgment on them. So the pleasure you get in giving something to someone else is almost more easy to enjoy and more pure than for yourself sometimes. And it seems like he really embodied that.
I give you one of the ultimate sweet stories about him. We would go to Kutcher's Country Club in Monticello, and we would go lake fishing. They had a small lake on the premises, and he would do this every summer. He would be fishing there all day with me, and I'd be fishing next to him. And inevitably, the father and children would be strolling, walking around the lake on a beautiful day. He would take a fish that he caught, keep it on the hook, put it back in the water with the bob, with a red and white plastic bob. Then when the kid would come with his father, 5 years old, 6 years old, 7-year-old kid would come, and father would be standing there with the fishing rod. He would turn to him and say, "Oh, hello, young man. Have you ever gone fishing ever in your life?" And the kid would say, "No, no, no, I never did it." He said, "You want to try?" And the kid would look up, "Daddy, can I try or something?" The father would say, "Yeah, go ahead, try." So he would call the kid over. He would give him hand him the fishing rod, and say, and give him a fishing lesson. You see that red and white plastic ball floating in the water there? That's the bob. When it starts to wiggle a little, you got to nibble. That means the fish is like in the area, and he's starting to like go for the bait. He said, but if you see him pull it down under the water, then he went for a bite, and you'll probably have him on the hook, and then you could reel him in and you catch him. So the kid would take it, would listen and take it in. He'd sit there, and then, sure enough, after a few minutes, the fish that was already on the hook would start to run away, swim away. And my father would say, "Look, look, you got a nibble, you got something there, you got something there." And the kids start getting all excited and going crazy. Hold it, reel it in, start to reel it in. The kid would reel it in a little bit. The bob would get pulled down all the way under by the fish that was already on the hook. And the kid would go, "Oh, oh," we got all excited. It's thrilled out of his mind. He'd reel it in, and sure enough, boop, out of the water would come the fish, plop on the land, and the kid would be giddy with laughter and pleasure. So this is the extent that the man would go to come up with this mishigas of having the kid catch a fish that was already caught just to make him happy. It was something he did over and over again his entire life. Then to make even more children happy, he would take, even though it made the chambermaids, the cleaning ladies upset at the hotel, he would take all the fish he caught, bring them up to the hotel room, fill the bathtub with fish, of pickerel and carp and sunfish and catfish and whatever we caught, and bass, and put them in the bathtub of our hotel room. And then have all the kids in the hotel that were staying in the hotel come up to the room to see all the fish, all the little kids to see the fish in the fish tanks. So when the cleaning lady came in, she would see all the fish in the bathroom. She'd give a geschrei and scream, like, "What the hell's going on here?" And he made her happy. He'd say, like, "You could take home whatever fish you want for dinner." and she calmed down, and the cleaning lady calmed down. But the kids, the joy that he took in making children happy are exemplified by those two examples I gave you, teaching the one kid how to fish who already caught a fish, and when the fish was already caught, and then putting them all in his bathtub so that all the kids in the hotel can have some joy in seeing the fish, all the variety of fish. Even a little thing like that shows the make of the man.
Wow. Did he play like that with you and your brother and your sister? Was he funny like that?
Yeah. He was up for practical jokes and and little tricks and this and that. But that stands out in my mind as something he did for others.
Yeah. You mentioned that like in the book it talks about it that over the years he and your mother started to grow farther apart. When did that start?
Oh, I don't know. They were happily married most of the time. It was much later in life.
Oh, it was later. It was mainly later.
Yeah.
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 Your mother got involved with a bunch of other causes. Do you want to talk a little bit about those?
No, there were some of the causes that my father was involved in when they were when they spent more time together. They were both on the board. Besides children, he had the same affection for elderly people. He felt that in America, Americans don't have respect for elderly people. They don't stand up to give them a seat in the bus. They don't help them with their bags if they're carrying something. That they have no respect or appreciation for elderly people. So he was on the board of two different Jewish old age homes. One, the Jewish Home and Rehabilitation Center, and there was a second one that he and my mother were both on the boards of. So I think since he couldn't do anything to keep his own parents from being murdered, helping the elderly was something he could do, even though they weren't his parents; they were somebody's parents. So I think he felt like he was doing a mitzvah by helping the elderly people. So it's really children and the elderly, again, because of the Holocaust, that had such importance to him, and that he was so devoted to.
What was his involvement like in education?
What do you mean in education?
Yeah, in education, was he? I don't remember reading so much about it in the book, but in terms of schools, in terms of his approach to education, did he?
No, he was just a fanatic about it. He just knew education was key. Uh, he drove all three of us to be A students. He made it pretty clear that we should all go to Ivy League schools, which we all did. uh, so, and it was more up to my mother to see that we did our homework, that if we needed tutors, that we got them, because he didn't want to see any one of us uh, do less than our potential. So we were driven that way. So the importance of education was emphasized, and to get into an Ivy League school when it meant something good was paramount to him. He wanted us all going to Ivy League schools.
In the book, it talks about how he never did make a trip to Israel.
Right.
I'm the reason for it I don't remember offhand, but do you want to talk about?
There were multiple reasons. Yeah. The one was he wanted the whole family to go together. And then he was saying we should all go to the follow his European path first. We should go to Auschwitz and then Mauthausen and then Israel. So that's already a 2-3 week trip. And there was no way he could coordinate all our schedules and his work schedule. And to do it, to do that combined trip, which is the way he wanted to do it. And to do it alone, he I don't know where he read it, but he read somewhere or thought there's some Orthodox teaching that says if a Jew goes to Israel, he's not supposed to go as a tourist and just see the place and leave. He's supposed to stay there, make Aliyah, stay there and make it his home, because that's the Jewish homeland. Have you ever heard anything like that? Any variation of that?
There is somewhat of a variation that once you actually, it's not necessarily visiting, but once you actually live there, it does become problematic to leave. So there
Okay,
is
well,
some variation
he
of that.
misinterpreted it. And never went there because he thought if he stepped foot there, he's got to stay there, and he wasn't ready to retire. And the third and probably most important, and one of the most important reasons was there was always the risk of a bank robbery, check kiting, fraud, uh, an officer being paid off, uh, too many catastrophic catastrophic things that could happen at the bank. So he only felt comfortable going on vacations to Kutcher's, which was 2.5 hours away from the bank, in an emergency that he could rush back and fix it or take care of it or control it, or a 2.5 hour flight to Miami Beach, where we would stay in whatever kosher hotel was the nicest one at the time, also 2.5 hours from the bank in a crisis should there be an emergency. But Israel was on the other side of the world, and he knew that something bad happens in the business, he's the only one he trusts to take care of it or keep it under control, and he can't do that if he's that far away from the business. So those three reasons: the fact that he wanted to make a bigger trip and combine Europe, and our schedules didn't work out. The thought that if he went there, he should stay there, and the fact that during a crisis he couldn't possibly take care of his empire. So he never made it there. So what he did, I think I made it clear in the book, is that I'm sure he always wanted to go in his heart, but instead he wound up, for every occasion, at any time, for any reason, would go to the Jewish National Fund, and for kid graduated a small activity, he'd send 18 trees, and if it was a bigger celebration, he'd buy 180 trees, and if it was a wedding for the birth of a child, he'd buy 1,800 trees for through the Jewish National Fund for Israel. So he bought so many trees for Israel from the Jewish National Fund that it probably amounted to acres and acres of trees in Israel. That's how many he bought. But you are correct; he never made it there himself.
Did he,
Even though all three of his children did, and he encouraged us to go as often as possible, and my mother did. So his wife went, his three kids went, and he just never made it.
when he was no longer working at the bank and he got sick, was there an attempt to try to bring him there,
No,
or
he got sick so suddenly he was on his deathbed almost instantly. He got
uh
diagnosed with stage 4 multiple myeloma when there was no cures or no ways to even like postpone death. Yeah, he was seeing the top doctors at Columbia Presbyterian at the time. The best medication, chemo at the time, was thalidomide, uh, and uh, and those things had changed. The one thing that could have kept him alive a little longer, he wasn't a candidate for, was a stem cell harvesting and then infusion, which would have just kept him alive a little longer. It's like the Hail Mary, the last thing you do when everything else is failing and the cancer is spreading. And he wasn't a candidate for that. He had started the harvesting of the cells, but couldn't complete it because he had some other complication or breakdown that required hospitalization, and he was too weak to continue to undergo that. And he would not have been a candidate any longer for the stem cell replacement. But no, traveling was out of the question as one of the side effects of having multiple myeloma. It's a blood cancer, but it's a blood cancer that eats away your bones, that turns them into eggshells. So you can't be around people. You can't go anywhere. You can't go near anything because you could bang into somebody and break your elbow. Anything you bang into, you could break because your entire skeleton, from your head down to your toes, is disintegrating. It's disintegrating and cracking apart into eggshells. So it's extremely painful. And towards the end, it was so painful that the nurses had to let him administer a morphine drip just so he'd be able to sleep at night because of the pain involved in that horrible disease.
terrible. The turnout at the funeral, what was it like being there?
It was amazing. It was amazing that thousands of people showed up to pay respects to him, and that we had to have it at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center because there wasn't one synagogue or Jewish chapel or funeral home that would be big enough for all the people that would attend, between the stockholders, the officers, the friends, the family. And it was just phenomenal that people came from all over the tri-state area if they could be there. And we all spoke. My sister, my brother, and I all made a memorial toast, a memorial speech about our father. We each covered different topics, and then I came up with an idea of turning the sad occasion into finding the silver lining in the cloud, just like my father would have done. And I said, let his passing away not be for naught. And instead of buying flowers or giving money to the Cancer Association or doing some other nice deed in his name, do the thing that meant the most to him, which was Holocaust education. So people don't forget what happened and so that it doesn't happen again. So I told everyone there that whatever money you donate to Steven Spielberg's Shoah Foundation, my family will double it. So this was 20 years ago. His friends and family, everybody there contributed $150,000. My family doubled it. And they handed Spielberg a check for $300,000 for the Shoah Foundation. And that included a tape, a VHS, that's how long ago it was, a VHS tape of one of my father's lectures at the Livingston it's called Suburban Torah Center in Livingston, when he was healthy, young, and fiery. Originally, I told him, I'll give everybody his Shoah Foundation testimony. And then I said, nah, why should they remember him when he looks like he's dying of cancer and he's under chemo and he's not in great shape? let him see the Siggi that everyone remembered and loved, as strong, powerful, energetic, and full of strength. And we substitute tapes. I said, I hope you'll forgive me. I told you you're getting the show with tapes, but you're not. You're getting the tape from the suburban Livingston synagogue lecture. And nobody complained because it was quite a lecture.
The tapes, I forgot the tapes. I remember at one point you wanted, oh, right. So when Spielberg taped him, he originally wasn't going to, but you
Right.
approached him and you got him to do it.
Yes. Yes.
You were convincing.
Yes. I didn't realize at the time. My brother and I each bought tickets to a charity event in the Hamptons. Tickets were $1,000 a piece for $2,000. We went to the party where Spielberg was going to be at this home, and it was a fundraiser. And I told my brother, I said, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get at this party to get to see Spielberg, get Spielberg to tape our father. So we got there, we situated ourselves. I kept watching Spielberg, where he's going, who he's talking to, waiting for the right moment. And I figured he's like, everybody's talking to him, and it's hard to like get him alone. So I just dove in and said, excuse me, Mr. Spielberg. And while the other people, whatever they were talking about, just got quiet, because all of a sudden I just interrupted. Excuse me, Mr. Spielberg, I have something extremely urgent and important to talk to you about. He says, okay, go on, what is it? And I told him, I said, my father was probably the most articulate Auschwitz survivor of them all. He used to lecture on it. He lectured for Elie Wiesel's Holocaust class at BU. He lectured at Brown, where my sister went to school. He lectured at University of Pennsylvania, where I went to school. He lectured during Yom HaShoah. He lectured. I said, and it'd be a shame if your organization asked him to tape years ago, but he never wanted to do it because he was a workaholic, and he wasn't sure whether he would lose the rights to his own story if he wanted to put it out himself one day or make a movie out of it one day. So he didn't do it. Long story short, he didn't do it. Now he's dying of multiple myeloma. He could be dead tomorrow, stage 4. And it's something that your organization should have. And he said, I'm sorry, but we've already moved on for a year and a half now. We've already stopped doing the interviews. For a year and a half, we're on to phase 2. I go, phase 2? I go, what's phase 2? He said, downloading all the testimony, translating it into different languages, downloading it to different universities, museums, and scholarly places where to be studied and learned, doing audio tapes for this and that, the next thing. I said, it would be a crime. It'd be a crime for your organization and for Jewish history and for the Jewish people to not get his story. He was not an ordinary person. He came to America with nothing. After 59 relatives were murdered, he took over 2 of the most anti-Semitic businesses in American history, a commercial bank and an oil and gas producing company, and created an empire. He was Elie Wiesel's closest friend. He helped create the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. I said, if you doubt any of this, talk to your sister. She's married to Shimon Katz, my rabbi's son. She'll tell you about my family and how philanthropic we are and this and that. I said, and my family will show its appreciation. I think I may have gone like this. He says, I goes, well, sometimes we make an exception. He said, okay, great. He said, I'll do my best. Your people, I'll have someone call you next week. And that's when I said, thank you so much. I walked away. My brother and I were like doing cartwheels, hugging and kissing, that mission accomplished. And I couldn't wait to get home and tell my sick, dying father that Spielberg had agreed to tape him.
What did he say when you told him?
It took so long. It took, because he was undergoing chemo, and it took so long because he was speaking slowly. And the chemo would take him 2-3 days to bounce back till he was articulate again, till he remembered his own name again, let alone dates and places where he was deported, picked up, beaten, or etc. Uh, that they had to come, that they already had come 2 times in between the chemo sessions to do the interviews. So I get a call from somebody at the organization and said, Ivan, it's very costly for us to keep sending somebody back again and again and again to get your father's testimony to get it done. And I said, just forget about that. Finish the job. Come there one more time when he's in good shape and get it done. It'll be worth it to you to not worry about the filming costs for that day. So they came back for a third time. So my father's testimony is 10 and a half hours long. Maybe 11 and a half, I forgot. And I think it's out of the 51,000 testimonies. I think my father's the longest for the reason I just told you. It took 3 times under chemo, special circumstances to get it done. But we got it done.
And
that testimony was the basis for the book, along with some other lectures and interviews, et cetera, et cetera.
the videos of your father speaking, is there a video when he spoke at West Point?
No, I don't know. It was, I don't know why. I don't know
I
how.
haven't seen any video of him. I would love. Is there any video of him available? Any of these speeches
No, the
or?
New York Times. The video we have available are just from the Livingston lecture I told you. When my sister got honored at Solomon Schechter, or Solomon Schechter honored my father. Yeah, honored my father because my sister went there with her kids. So he made a speech there. So those were the only 2 speeches: the Shoah Foundation, the Livingston lecture, and the Solomon Schechter lecture. I don't think we ever had a video or audio or visual of his West Point lecture. I just knew it received half a page of the New York Times with a couple of photos talking about how emotional it was.
I think it would be so amazing because his personality was so alive to have some video.
Yeah, you see a snippet of it if you go to the website unstoppablesiggi.com.
Uh-huh.
That's where you added the Siggi, because for the website we made it unstoppablesiggi.com because
Okay.
a few other movies that have been made called Unstoppable, not about the Holocaust. So we have unstoppablesiggi.com, and on that website there is a short 20-minute mini doc. It's actually 16 minutes, called "I'm Still in Auschwitz," and in that film you'll see a little clip when he was young, healthy, and lectured.
Okay. Do you guys? I mean, you guys must have more videos of him, just in who his personality was. I don't know.
No, we know it happened 20 years ago. Everybody wasn't videotaping everything they do and say and every move. If we had them, I'd give them to you. Believe me. I wish we had them. We don't have them.
I just want to see the fish in the bathtub at Kutcher's.
Exactly. We don't have
them. This was such a pleasure. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap it
No,
up?
I think we covered everything from soup to nuts. I just would say that one of the things we didn't discover is how, being the son of an Auschwitz survivor, how it inspired me to be a singer and activist for PTSD.
Oh, so let's talk about that.
I have a charity called the Peaceman Foundation that helps those groups that suffer most from PTSD and looks for cures for PTSD, since there is none. There's just treatments. And so I have a singing career under the name Sir Ivan, aka Peaceman, because I wear capes with a huge Swarovski peace sign on the back when I perform or do red carpets. And all the songs are anti-war songs and songs about universal love. Most of them from the 60s and early 70s, from the Woodstock days and the anti-Vietnam War days. And I took them and reinvented them for a new generation and turned them into dance records for the nightclubs today. So the Peaceman Foundation is very important to me. PTSD is very important to me, and the organizations that I support that help people with PTSD. And they're making major breakthroughs in that.
Well, actually, let's talk a little bit more about that. That's something that's fascinating to me. And one of the things, I mean, that I see and know is that it does pass down. I mean, you feel it, you absorb it. if your parents have it, you feel it. And tell us more about what that was like for you.
Well, he's the one that suffered from the nightmares and flashbacks. My brother and sister and I never suffered from that. So those are classic symptoms of PTSD. He's the one that had migraine headaches from it that plagued him for most of his business life, and not my brother, sister, and I. So those symptoms didn't pass down, as you say. Our nervousness, our hyperness may have been, our nervous jumpiness may have uh, been passed down from his yelling and screaming and
Yeah.
in controlling way, but not the classic symptoms of PTSD, which is why I got involved in the as an activist and decided to focus on that as a charity.
So talk a little bit more about your involvement and what are the breakthroughs that are being made.
Well, in the early days, it was canines. Still today, they give soldiers coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. They gave them dogs to keep with them as companions, and they found out that pets help a great deal. So that's one form of relief. Uh, MDMA, the illegal drug called ecstasy, the main ingredient in a drug called ecstasy. This has shown promising results in Harvard and in Israel and wherever these PTSD studies are done. Obviously, they're done in Israel because the country's been in a state of war since its inception. So the country suffers from more PTSD than anywhere in the world. And that's where all kinds of experiments are taking place, promising experiments. So MDMA is another major breakthrough in helping people with PTSD. Getting very involved in sports and activities, just staying active and aggressive and focused on sports, so that your mind isn't always just sitting around thinking about the tragedy or the trauma that gave you the PTSD. So athletics and sports is also a form of help. And now there's more high tech involved. I mean, obviously, some doctors prescribe antidepressants and medications and tranquilizers and things like that, depending on the situation and the problem. But now they're talking about ways to like reprogram your brain so that your brain doesn't get triggered by certain things that would trigger an episode of PTSD, and instead your brain has been wired to like basically get over it or think about more pleasant things. So that's it in a nutshell.
A lot of I mean the way the brain is able to adjust things is something that I've been fascinated about, and I've seen how incredibly versatile the brain can be. And I think that, with especially with sport, I think a lot of what happens when people are in incredibly stressful situations and they're stuck with it is um just this something is just stuck in the nerves and that needs to get out. And like all these things, whether it's, animals are, I remember I was one time in a situation where I was incredibly stressed and just I remember I was going to synagogue. It was actually it was a Shabbos, it was a Sabbath. I went to synagogue and I just walked in and I couldn't be, I just felt like I could not be around anybody. Like my mind, I was so distraught over something, and I took a walk out, and where I live, there's, hikes and trails, and I went out and I saw like a group of horses, and I never had any connection with horses or any did anything with them, but something drew me to them. Something really drew me to them, and I approached them, and as I got closer, I started getting a little bit more scared or afraid of going near them, but something told me to continue going closer. So I did. And as I got closer to them, they came around me in a circle. And one of them started resting its head next to mine. It was the most bizarre thing. I was surrounded by like 5, 7 horses. And then they just walked away. And then I walked back and I get back into town and I start seeing people on the street and I start smiling and saying hello to everybody. And I'm like, what the heck just happened to me? Like, what did these horses do? It's incredible what these animals can do. And then the next day, what was funny is the next day I went on the hike again. I saw them again, and I'm like running to them to say hi, like these are my friends. They walk by me like I'm not even there. It's like they know when you need them, and then when you don't, they don't even see you. Um,
Funny, I imagine since every human being is different, and everybody's trauma and their ability to heal from that trauma is different. I imagine that just like what you experienced with the horses, that anything could might do the right thing at the right time if the circumstances lend itself to it.
yeah, I totally believe that. It is not a one size fits all thing. It's sometimes it's just exploring and
So
yeah.
the Peace Man Foundation, I raise money for those causes. It's also an anti-bullying charity, and all royalties from my singing career. I have 18 songs out under the name Sir Ivan. All those royalties go to the Peaceman Foundation. And while the focus has been in the past to the LGBT community, which is a heavily bullied and suicidal group that suffers from PTSD, and soldiers coming back from the war against terrorism in Iraq and Afghanistan has been another group that I've supported. Uh, Obviously, due to the new trauma and the new suffering of the Jewish people, both the anti-Semitism in America and the world, and the suffering of my brethren in Israel, uh, donations will be geared towards them now, since they are most in need, and those causes are most near and dear to my heart.
Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. It was very, very eye-opening. And
Thank you, thank you. I'm glad you had such a beautiful sense. Really got all the elements out of the story that I wanted people to walk away from. Because the way I look at it, and I'll end on this note, is that I feel that that book, you don't have to be a Holocaust survivor for it to be the most inspiring book you'll ever read, that could give you the strength and the hope to carry on, to not do something desperate, to not commit suicide, to not give up. And it's a lifesaver. If I'm a psychiatrist or a psychologist or anybody that deals with people that are suffering from PTSD, from a rape, from a car accident, from a plane accident, from a beating on the street, from just about any type of trauma, that book is the book to get you out of your depression and give you the hope and the inspiration to carry on, to fight on, and to be the best person you possibly can be. Because if Siggi could do what he did under those circumstances, then most likely than not, what I'm going through doesn't compare to what he went through, and therefore, I shouldn't give up. I should follow in his footstep and take inspiration from him and his story and the way he viewed the world.
I mean, the book is so well written. I mean, I think if you just read it with quiet and you just get into it. I mean, once you get into it, you get sucked into it. It is you feel it. I mean, you really feel it. It's it's a and again, there's I think the fact that it's so honest and raw about everything is part of what I think can make it so relatable and helpful to people. Because if it's just kind of like a hero story and you edit out, the stuff that doesn't make him look perfect, then it becomes less relatable. But it was so relatable. Like it really, really was. As extraordinary as he was, it was just so real and human.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, I mean, everyone listening, I really encourage you to buy the book and read the book Unstoppable. In my mind, this is going to be Unstoppable
But
Siggy.
it is unstoppable. You have to go to unstoppablesiggy.com.
UnstoppableSiggy.com. And
It's Siggy's Siggi. Some people spell it with a Z by mistake.
oh yeah, okay.
Unstoppablesiggy.com.
Siggi.com. And enjoy the book and get on the Siggy ride.